So today, let's talk about a queen who by all accounts should have had it all. We're talking 3 kingdoms right in the palm of her hand, only to see it all slip away. This is the incredible story of Mary, Queen of Scots, a life that started with so much promise and ended in blood and betrayal. But you know what? We're going to start at the end. Picture this. Fotheringhay Castle, England. It's the morning of February 8th, 1587. A queen, believed to be chosen by God, is kneeling, waiting for the executioner's axe. This is it. This is the final, brutal scene in the life of Mary Stuart.
The big question is, how? How does a woman who wore the crowns of Scotland and France and had a killer claim to England's throne end up like this? Well, to figure out how she got to the chopping block, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning.
And trust me, to really get a sense of her fall, you have to understand the incredible heights she started from. From the moment she was born, Mary was basically destined for greatness. I mean, think about that for a second. 6 days old. Her father, King James V, dies just after she's born, and bam, the entire weight of a kingdom is placed on a tiny infant. There's even this famous story that his last words were a prophecy, something like, "It came with a girl and it will go with a girl," basically saying the Stuart dynasty would end with her.
Now, to keep her safe from England's King Henry VIII, who had his own plans for her, Mary was shipped off to France when she was just 5. And there, she just blossomed. She was smart, she was charming, and by all accounts, absolutely beautiful. By the time she was 16, she'd married the heir to the French throne, Francis, making her a queen all over again.
Seriously, her early life sounds like something straight out of a fairy tale, right? Born a queen, whisked off to the glamorous French court, given a top-notch education, and then she marries the future king of France. By 17, she had 2 crowns. But there was a third one, and it was always on her mind.
And here is the conflict that defines her entire life. See, as the great-granddaughter of England's King Henry VIII, Mary had a direct and very powerful claim to the English throne. And for Catholics across Europe who saw Queen Elizabeth as illegitimate because of her father's messy break from the church, Mary wasn't just an heir. To them, she was the rightful Queen of England, period. And that made her a massive threat to her cousin, Elizabeth.
Then, just like that, Mary's whole world came crashing down. Her husband, King Francis, died suddenly. Her position in France was gone overnight. She had no choice but to go back to Scotland, a country she barely knew anymore. So at just 18 years old, Mary returns to a Scotland that's in the middle of a massive religious upheaval, the Protestant Reformation. And here she comes, a devout Catholic raised in the luxury of the French court. She was a total outsider. The fiery preacher John Knox was constantly railing against her from his pulpit. But you know, for a while she handled it really well, showing tolerance and even working closely with Protestant advisors.
But here's the thing about Mary. Her cool-headed pragmatism in politics, it was completely torpedoed by her passionate and some would say reckless personal life. Her next choice of a husband wouldn't just shake her reign, it would completely destroy it.
Elizabeth, I tried to control Mary by suggesting an English nobleman for her to marry. Mary's response? Nope. Instead, she fell hard for her cousin, the dashing but incredibly arrogant Lord Darnley. By marrying him, another royal with Tudor blood, she wasn't just ignoring Elizabeth. She was creating an absolute power couple with an even stronger claim to the English throne. The marriage was a total disaster, almost immediately. Darnley got greedy for power and became insanely jealous of Mary's close friend and private secretary, David Rizzio. And then, in one of the most horrifying acts you can imagine, Darnley and a gang of lords dragged Rizzio out of a dinner and stabbed him to death, right in front of Mary, who was 6 months pregnant. The marriage was over. Less than a year later, the house where Darnley was staying was just obliterated by a huge explosion. But here's the really strange part. His body was found out in the garden. He wasn't killed in the blast. It looked like he had been smothered or strangled. And that became the question that would follow Mary for the rest of her days. Who killed the king? Suspicion was everywhere, and a lot of it pointed right back at Mary. But the number one suspect was a charismatic, ruthless nobleman named the Earl of Bothwell. So what does Mary do? In what might be the single worst political decision of her life, she marries Bothwell, just 3 months after her husband's murder. Now, was she in on the plot with him? Or was she his victim? It's still debated today. But it didn't matter. The perception was awful. The Scottish lords had had enough. Their Catholic queen was now married to the man everyone thought had murdered her Protestant husband. That was it. They rose up in rebellion.
Mary's army just melted away. She was captured, thrown in prison, and forced to give up her throne to her baby son, James. But her story wasn't over. She had one last, desperate move to make.
After an incredible escape from her island prison, Mary managed to raise another army, but she was defeated again. Desperate, she fled south across the border into England, literally throwing herself at the mercy of her cousin and rival, Queen Elizabeth. She hoped Elizabeth would help her get her throne back. It turned out to be the worst mistake of her life.
Because Elizabeth didn't see a cousin in need, she saw a threat, a huge one. Mary was a Catholic icon with a claim to her throne, the perfect figurehead for anyone who wanted to overthrow her. So instead of getting help, Mary got a cage. It was a comfortable one, sure, but it was a cage, and she would stay in it for the next 18.5 years.
Elizabeth's plan was simple: keep Mary completely cut off. She was shuffled between remote English castles, kept away from the coast, away from Scotland, away from anyone who could help her. But even locked away, she was like a magnet for Catholic plots against Elizabeth. For almost 2 decades, Elizabeth actually resisted the calls to just execute her cousin. But she knew that as long as Mary was alive, her own life was in danger, and it was one last plot that finally sealed Mary's fate. Elizabeth's spy master, a man named Francis Walsingham, set up this brilliant trap. He intercepted Mary's secret letters, decoded them, and he finally found the smoking gun, clear proof that Mary had given her blessing to the Babington plot, a plan to assassinate Queen Elizabeth. That was all he needed. She was put on trial for treason.
She argued that a queen couldn't be tried by a foreign court, but it didn't matter. She was found guilty and sentenced to death. On the day of her execution, she played the part of a Catholic martyr perfectly. She even wore a crimson dress, the color of martyrdom in the Catholic Church. Her last words were a prayer in Latin.
But the reality of her death was just awful. The executioner messed up. The first swing of the axe missed her neck and hit the back of her head. It took a second blow to kill her. And then, in this final, bizarre moment, when he held her head up for the crowd to see, her famous red wig fell off, and everyone saw that under it she had short, gray hair worn down by all those years in prison.
So in the end, Mary lost everything. But the irony is, her son, James, would eventually take the English throne and unite the two kingdoms, achieving a destiny she never could. So what do we make of her? Was she tragic romantic hero, just swept away by forces she couldn't control? Or was she a deeply flawed ruler whose own bad decisions led her straight to the executioner's block? Well, that's the question her incredible life leaves us with.